Subcommittee will come to order. Good morning. Pursuant to notice, the Subcommittee on Research and Science Education meets to consider the following measure. The committee print of the Cybersecurity Research and Development Amendments Act of 2009. We will now proceed to the markup. This morning, the subcommittee will consider the committee print of the Cybersecurity Research and Development Amendment Act of 2009. The subcommittee has held a series of hearings examining the state of cybersecurity R&D. At these hearings, witnesses emphasized the need to better coordinate and prioritize the federal R&D portfolio, to improve partnerships between the federal government and the private sector, and to train an IT workforce that can meet the growing needs of both the public and private sectors. Our witnesses also stressed that cybersecurity research needs to encompass all stages of hardware and software design, from project management to social and behavioral factors arising from human-computer interactions. The legislation we are considering today addresses these concerns. First, it requires federal agencies to develop and implement a strategic plan for the federal cybersecurity R&D portfolio. The plan must be based on an assessment of cybersecurity risk to make sure the taxpayer dollars fund the R&D needed to meet the strategic needs of our country and to keep the Internet users safe from cybercrime. The strategic plan will also contain a description of how the program will transfer technology from our national labs and universities to industry, and how our federal R&D objectives complement rather than duplicate R&D occurring in the private sector. In addition to developing a strategic plan informed by industry and academia, the bill establishes a university industry task force to explore mechanisms and models for carrying out collaborative research in cybersecurity. The legislation addresses cybersecurity workforce needs for the federal government and for the nation by requiring an assessment of needs and providing scholarships and fellowships to students to pursue advanced degrees in cybersecurity-related fields. Finally, the bill reauthorizes and expands NSF's Trustworthy Computing program, placing a new emphasis on research into the social and behavioral aspects of cybersecurity, an important area identified by our witnesses. Cyber threats are constantly evolving, and cybersecurity R&D must evolve also in concert with a combination of near-term fixes and long-term projects that build a more secure foundation. The Cybersecurity R&D Amendments Act will ensure an overall vision and an implementation plan for this federal cybersecurity R&D portfolio, and will train the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. I want to thank members for their participation this morning, and I look forward to a productive markup. And with that, I will now recognize Dr. Ehlers to present his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today we are examining legislation to reauthorize the Cybersecurity Research and Development Act. With the rapid evolution of information technology fields, it is critical that we adopt policies that keep us ahead of impending cyber threats. This subcommittee has held a series of hearings this year focused on the state of federal cybersecurity research and development. The testimonies we received from industry experts and federal agency officials all pointed to a serious lack of coordination in our cybersecurity strategies. Building on the information we have gleaned, I am hopeful this legislation will effectively refine our efforts by establishing a strategic research and development plan and roadmap. As an educator, I'm particularly interested in how we will further support the education of training of students in this rapidly changing field. Consequently, I am pleased that the draft legislation codifies a scholarship program at the National Science Foundation to promote undergraduate and graduate degrees in cybersecurity fields. I personally did not realize how important this was until I met a year ago with a professor of computer science in which he pointed out the declining enrollments of students in computer science. And the decline has been going on for several years, to the point that there is a severe shortage of computer scientists. And obviously, if you're going to deal with cybersecurity, you have to not only be a computer scientist, but a very bright computer scientist. So I'm very pleased with the National Science Foundation program established in this legislation. As we become more dependent on virtual information and services, security becomes more difficult to manage. Attaining and maintaining a safe and trustworthy information technology and communications infrastructure is imperative, and we must not forget that it is an ongoing challenge. I look forward to refining and promoting this legislation as it moves through the legislative process. I'd like to add a note here also regarding cybersecurity. I do not claim to be an expert in the field, but some years ago I was on a NATO task force studying the issue, and I ended up being assigned the task of writing a report. It was astounding to me to recognize how vulnerable we were to cybersecurity attacks, and also how ill-prepared we were to deal with the problem. We have made some progress since that time, but we have quite a ways to go. And it's downright frightening to recognize what damage can be done through cybersecurity attacks. So I'm very pleased to support this bill and to participate in bringing it to the House. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Ehlers. I think every hearing in Markup, we learn more and more of expertise that you do have in a lot of different areas in science and technology. And appreciate your contributions. And certainly, as this, we know with everything that is now available, everything that is done electronically, cyber attacks are more and more of a security issue. So it's why it's so important that we move forward with this with legislation. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Okay, with that, we will move on to the markup. I ask unanimous consent that the committee print is considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and the members proceed with the amendments in the order of the roster. Without objection, so ordered. First amendment on the roster is a manager's amendment offered by the chair. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to the committee print, amendment number 042, offered by Mr. Lipinski of Illinois.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. I recognize myself for 5 minutes to explain the amendment. This amendment makes technical corrections to the committee print, including language for the reauthorization of NSF's Cybersecurity Research Center's program for fiscal years 2010 through 2014. It also clarifies the responsibilities and requirements of scholarship recipients and awardee institutions in the monitoring and reporting of information related to a scholarship recipient's service obligation. And I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. Is there any further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I support the amendment and urge that we adopt it.
Thank you, Dr. Ehlers. Any other discussion on the amendment? If no, the vote will occur on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The second amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by a gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Johnson. Are you ready to proceed with your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to the committee print, amendment number 084, offered by Ms. Eddie Bernice Johnson of Texas.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. I recognize the gentlelady for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and our ranking member and fellow members of the subcommittee. My amendment to the Cybersecurity Research and Development Amendments Act of 2009 contains several changes to the legislation. All changes are intended to make this initiative more inclusive to underrepresented minorities. excuse me, this week, the Congressional Black Caucus is busy with meetings, panel discussions, briefings, and other events that are part of the annual legislative conference. As a matter of fact, I'm hosting my 17th Science and Technology Brain Trust. Will be held at the Washington Convention Center and on Capitol Hill. A wide variety of discussions are occurring this week in policy that are of interest to African American community and to the broader policy community. The CBC Foundation is the host, and the Science and Technology Brain Trust is Friday at 9 a.m. in room 143A, if anyone is willing. Mr. Norm Augustine will be there, as well as several other panelists. At this free event that is open to the public, we'll be discussing models of education excellence, and this would be one of the things that we would continue to emphasize, and that is more diversity. Along these lines, programs such as the Federal Cyber Scholarship for Service Program, as well as the research program, can do much to engage underrepresented minorities in the area of computer science. My amendment affects 4 parts of the bill. First, it states that the Cybersecurity Strategic Research and Development Plan should include a description of how the research program will include women and minorities to help to foster a more diverse workforce in this area. Secondly, my amendment says that in developing the plan, the agencies involved shall seek advice from minority-serving institutions in addition to stakeholders in the industry, academia, and other relevant organizations. And third, it addresses the Federal Cyber Scholarship for Service Program, which seeks to recruit and train the next generation of federal cybersecurity professionals and increase the capacity of the higher education system in trainings such a workforce. The bill states that merit reviews grants will support several different activities to increase the capacity of colleges and universities to train such individuals. My amendment states that one of those activities in support of institutional partnership, especially including minority-serving institutions, because these institutions historically receive a disproportionately small share of federal research and education funding. More should be done to help them. And finally, my amendment addresses the selection process for the Cyber Scholarship for Service Program. Scholarship awards will reflect the goal of promoting broader participation in underrepresented minorities. And Mr. Chairman, I understand that you will support these changes, and I want to express my gratitude for your partnership with this endeavor. We really must be proactive to devise federal policies and programs that promote inclusiveness of diverse groups. House Concurrent Resolution 53 that I introduced this March celebrates the strides that African American students have made in terms of educational attainment in computer science. In 2006, African Americans made up 12.4% of the candidates receiving computer science degrees, a proportion almost equal to their representation in the United States population, which is 12.8%. This good news can be examined in more detail in an article published by the National Society of Black Engineers called Blacks and Computer Science, The Secrets of Their Success. The progress has been slow, Mr. Chairman, but I believe that we are making a difference, and I want to thank you again for your support, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment also. Yield back to the remainder of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any further discussion on the amendment? Dr. Ehlers?
Mr. Chairman, I support the amendment and urge its adoption.
Thank you, Dr. Ehlers. Any further discussion on the amendment? I thank General Lady for her amendment, which I support the amendment, and thank the General Lady for her work on this issue. And seeing as there's no further discussion, vote will occur on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? If no, then the vote is on the committee print as amended. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All opposed will say no. In the opinion of Chair, the ayes have it. I recognize myself to offer a motion. I move that the subcommittee favorably report the committee prints as amended to the full committee. Furthermore, I move that staff be instructed to prepare the subcommittee report, and make necessary technical and conforming changes to the committee print in accordance with the recommendations of the subcommittee. The question is on the motion to report the committee print favorably. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the print is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure. I want to thank the members for their attendance. It was a very quick markup, but a very critical, important issue, and look forward to working with all of you as we move forward on this. This concludes the subcommittee markup.
Thank you.